That was the thing that I found in some of the 12-step programs, that fear of if you stop going meetings, you'll relapse. You stop doing this. I'm like, wow, this is hard work. I'm almost miserable. And
he's freaking hitting it home there. I felt that honestly in some of these situations that I've been in.
Because after some point, you just can't hold it anymore. You can't avoid it anymore.
And the savage reality is that when you're, let's say, addicted to porn, a lot of the sort of moral compass within the moment of watching it sort of does get put to the side.
I think they changed the hitbox or stuff. Oh my god.
Terrorists win.
What?
Yeah,
okay.
Easy done, bro. Yeah. Oh, mid one.
Is he cheating?
Nah, he's good, he's good.
Throwing flashback.
And look, bro, I think they're both on you. One mid.
Terrorists win.
Oh, nice try.
Yeah, we'll push a mid with these.
I flash. Was there an AK?
Counter-terrorists win. Oh, it's a piece of cake, so it is. Throwing fire.
No. This is just not our match. Corner. I'm just planting. Nice. Okay. They must have heard, bro.
Yeah.
Nice one. Check out for left.
Let's go CT.
I jumped CT.
Let's go CT. We'll both go.
I jumped.
We'll both go this way. Come.
Just wait, I see.
Terrorists win.
Okay.
Activating the bomb.
No!
I'm throwing a flashback. Terrorists win.
Yeah.
You will all die.
There we go. 30 seconds.
Nice try. Nice try.
Thanks.
One side. Nice shot. You hit him in there.
Grenade. Flashback.
Oh my god, this is really
Terrorists.
nice.
Nice.
I think CT.
Whoa. Terrorists win.
Nice one. Nice. I think he's side.
Planning.
Yeah, he's planting.
3.
Okay, let's pick. Nice.
Throwing smoke.
Single. Side.
Incendiary.
Last one I didn't hit him. He had SMG. Get these 2 rounds. I feel like they keep buying me every round.
I wish I had smoke. Sneaky peeky. What? Oh my god. Jump scare.
No idea what that was.
Double door.
2 there. 1 window.
Grenade.
Last one low.
What? He's picking through the molly.
I'm hearing plant, bro.
Bro, stay covered. It's smoke here.
Oh wow, that's so good.
Incendiary. Using the bomb. Throwing flashback.
Yo, defuse.
So close. So
Oh, hell
close.
no.
So close.
Try.
Yeah, nice try.
Left. Nice. I flash.
Flashback. I'm throwing fire. Counter-terrorists win. Counter-terrorists
How did he see me?
He's having a good day, bro.
Middle. Yeah, middle.
throwing.
I'm dead.
Terrorists win.
Well,
And zero. This.
so this channel, right, is pretty awesome because it covers the other side of the, I guess, half of the addiction.
Yes.
So this channel mainly covers, like, you know, when it comes from the actresses and the OnlyFans models. So it covers their side of the story, which is awesome. But then there's a lot of segments where it covers guys, and obviously this video is another one where it's pretty relatable in terms of like the internal conflict. So yeah, this guy talks about like the mental side of the addiction. It's super relatable for like all guys, I feel. And so yeah, definitely worth watching.
Okay, let's take a look.
Something that's meaningful and true.
Yeah. Within relationships that you were in, that you did consume pornography in, is that something that your partner knew about? Is that something that was kind of open and expected in relationships? Or do you feel like it was something you were really hiding in those relationships?
100% hiding in every relationship apart from the current one. So my partner, she's also in recovery. That's where we met. And it was probably about 3 years into the relationship before I opened up and admitted to that, admitted to this consumption. But because she is in recovery and knows it can take many different forms, she was very accepting of that. And even that moment of being honest with my partner for the first time, and being okay to talk about rather than shut down and judged and condemned. That was a real relief.
Do you know one thing about this? Typically, guys do hide it from their partners, right? And so it just makes sense why they would do that. I feel that when I was growing up in university, right, a lot of partners, and I think that I sort of had a bit of an insight into this. For example, the guy has a list of actresses that they watch and everything, and even the girl also has a list of what they like to watch. And so in some of these relationships, when I was growing up, there was that sort of non-shyness about it, or perhaps a better way to say it is normalization. And so and so sometimes in a lot of scenarios, both parties are okay with pornography and watching pornography. Because of that normalization and that acceptance, they're not aware of the long-term impacts of it, right?
Correct, bro. Definitely.
But yeah, I think when you get to a certain age, perhaps you're no longer with that partner, then it becomes, okay, well, I don't want to tell this perhaps new person about use of porn that I engage in, right? And so it just easily becomes a secret.
What does it look like for you?
It's been a long journey. So initially I went into Cocaine Anonymous, CA, and a 12-step program. But then I was 8 months sober from everything, pornography, alcohol, drugs. But then I got sectioned. That's when I spent time in a mental health hospital. And it was almost like in those programs, and you help loads of people. They can be amazing. But in there, it was removing these coping strategies, but they're not really, it didn't really teach me or my group how to build the life you wanted. So I came out of hospital, and then I paid for a therapist, an addiction specialist, a great person. And I've been seeing them every 2 to 3 weeks for maybe two and a half years. So That was more a slower process of recovery. You know, relapses happen. There's Unhooked podcast, which is great, that Jeremy Lipswich, and he really helped me out. Your channel, your information. Now,
Yeah, it's important here because when you commit to like recovering from porn, and I think I've covered this in like one of that doc that I made about a month ago. It seems that relapsing is something that's okay. You know what I mean by relapsing, right?
Yeah, I mean, getting back to the old habits, something like that.
Exactly. And there's this sort of notion in a lot of programs where they'll say that relapsing is part of recovery, or they'll say that relapsing is part of the journey. And I totally get this because, you know, I went through programs and where they were said that relapsing is part of it. And literally, I second what this guy's sort of talking about because I was in that sort of mental frame at one point. Obviously, knowing what I know now, it's a bit different. What I can say for sure, man, is that you take the mentality that relapsing is part of recovery. Yes, relapses do happen in programs, I would say, mathematically speaking. However, it's actually relapsing and aka engaging in the behavior again, which keeps the addiction alive. And so it's a very difficult situation. You know what I've talked to you about weed before, right? Back into the psychological pattern of the addiction over again, and it's the engaging again which creates the wanting. It puts you back in the sort of cycle of the addiction all over again. So that's the kind of fine line that needs to be drawn when it comes to talking about relapsing in recovery. It does happen, but it's not actually okay to relapse in the context of actually progressing in recovery, if that makes sense.
one fix. It's almost like, let me gather all this information and apply it in a way that works for me. You know, Relay is brilliant as well. One of your sponsors, use them. No one thing. It's almost like if you do enough of those things, they might only help 1%, but when you do them all together, that's 10%. And that's another day sober. It's another day without consumption. It's another day when you're building the life you want and moving further away from the life that you just don't want.
Yeah. And with that, I guess, how did you shift that mindset from rather than just looking at what you wanted to stop, the behaviors you wanted to stop, into what you wanted to build? How did that look for you?
Shifting that mindset, I think it was just over time. We just got so sick of this repetitive behavior having a detrimental effect on your life. So one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And it kind of started that shift in mindset with talking about the problem, you know, the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment you might hold, thinking you're the only one.
And this hits home really hard. This is exactly where I was at.
With this, then finding that supportive community of people who maybe are further along the journey than you, and they can help you forward, and then you look back and you help someone behind you. So it's almost like the inspiration from other people that I listen to podcasts on your channel of, and the information where I'm like, oh wow, people do talk about this. It is a problem, and they do recover. Now they're further ahead, and they're living the life or building the life that they want. So that talking thing is huge, like getting it out of your head, unraveling thoughts, feelings, emotions, letting the words hit the air and take away some of their negative power.
That's really awesome. It's so essential as well, I feel, in this space to just really talk openly about it. And it's really hard, obviously, because you have so much, like we've talked about before, there's just not much incentive for someone to talk about it in terms of like perhaps from a reputational standpoint, or as he put it correctly, you know, you're embarrassed or you're ashamed of it and everything like that. So it's really hard to open up. But as long as you actually, you know, ascertain the nature of like what is happening within an addiction mentally, and how the things that happen in the addiction are supposed to happen the way they do, it makes you look at things from a lot more of a objective standpoint and more of a top-down view, rather than you sort of living in your head with all these negative thoughts and negative stories. And when you're thinking about this problem in the correct way, you're actually in a better position to talk about it, because you realize that it's something that you can get past. It's something that you don't have to really be ashamed of, because like any other addiction. The mechanism of the addiction is just like any other addiction, just like alcohol, just like smoking, just like eating, right? When you have an eating compulsion, it's the same mechanism. Yes, things manifest differently, and there are nuances, there are different nuances between the addictions, no doubt. But in terms of the mental battle, the mental cycle, it pretty much follows the same rules in that sense, right?
What surprised you most about your recovery, either about yourself or about the process?
What surprised me the most, I think, was that moment, and I can't really think about when that was, when you're almost feeling like you're free of it, like it's lost its interest. You know, that those cognitive pathways, that dopamine, it can be so entrenched, so ingrained. You think, I'm never going to want to do anything else.
Cognitive pathways. That's a new way of saying it. That's good.
You know, my mind is
Yeah.
just constantly thinking about that, and then gradually, one day at a time, you get to a point where you just go, oh wow, I don't battle with it anymore. I don't struggle with it. I don't seek it out. And in fact, if you offered it me now, I'd be like, no, I've got better things to do. So that was really surprising.
Nice. I noticed how you said battle, right? That's so key. The mental conflict that you get is sort of from the language that you use when you're saying that you're in a battle. And I said the same thing when Tom was coaching me with the one-on-ones. I came up with something saying that it's a war or it's a fight or it's like the addiction is a beast. It's not the greatest way to think about it. You're giving it mentally on a mental stance level. You're just giving the addiction too much power than it deserves when you're in it, right? And it's a simple mindset changes that you can have, which puts you in the position of power as opposed to someone that's just reacting to what's happening to them. Right?
Never ever thought I'd be that free, where I just didn't even consider it. So that was quite a nice moment where you look back and go, I've come quite far. And you never want to take it for granted. You know, it's always a process of moving forward. I'm very aware with addiction, if you stop doing some of these things, then it's like doing press-ups in the car park. It's waiting for you to slip up. But also, it doesn't have to be in fear about it. And I think that was the thing that I found in some of the 12-step programs, that fear of, if you stop going meetings, you'll relapse. If you stop doing this, I'm like, wow, this is hard work. I'm almost miserable. Surely it should be sober and happy. And
Man, he's freaking hitting it home there. I felt that honestly in some of these situations that I've been in on some of these programs, because I felt that if I wasn't doing something such as following a routine or perhaps going to a meeting or attending a meeting, I felt on some level that I was regressing in my progress. And it makes it feel like, again, it puts you into this sense of powerlessness. And even these feelings can come up when you're feeling urges and you want to, in those moments that you want to watch porn, right? And so sometimes, let's say if you miss a meeting, the addicted part of your mind will come up with this internal self-talk, as it should. That is how addicted neural pathways work. It comes in with that negative self-talk and tells you that, because you've missed a meeting, because you haven't done this routine today, let's relapse, let's give in, let's
This also happens when you're doing cutting, bro, in the gym.
Yeah.
Like eating junk food and stuff.
Yes, very accurate. You just want to have that cheeseburger right on like one of those days. Don't get me wrong, it's one of those things that we all face and we all feel when we're going through something like that, right? But the reality is once you make those critical mindset shifts, you realize that you're in a lot more control than you originally thought you were. But again, it's that mental framework that you want to sort of correct before you actually move on into stopping and staying stopped, right?
And freeing and peaceful. And to find that space, I was like, that's a nice surprise.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that in that way, because I think for so many people on a journey to improve mental health or overcome addiction, that process of doing the work in between kind of the rock bottom that forces you to decide if you want to make a change and that kind of light at the end of the tunnel, that work is difficult. And I think it's common for people to say, well, I'm feeling worse than I was before. This can't be better. So to know that there's that light at the end of the tunnel, I think can be really encouraging for people to hear from someone who's been through that.
Freaking nailed it. Also, like, when I started NoFap, I just felt way worse. I just felt way worse doing NoFap, just like stopping, trying to count days, trying to build a streak. You almost feel that like, because it's easy for the addicted part of the mind to turn your streak, to turn your abstinence of porn into like this sort of cornerstone of your self-esteem, where if you don't reach a certain amount of days, if you're not staying away, quote unquote, from porn for a long time, let's say if I chose to relapse on day 3, your sense of self-worth is attached to that because of how the internal dialogue is happening in your mind, right? And you just feel a lot worse off. So that's super relatable.
A few months ago, I decided to do no fap and also no porn. For I didn't decide for how long it's gonna last,
Yeah.
but for that moments, I remember that I used to just try to avoid the thinking of the urges. When I feel the urges to watch or do it, I usually just try to avoid the thought of it, and which helped me to get like 32 days, I think that was.
Yeah.
But after that, like, I honestly just relapsed, you said, because from uh, after some point, you just can't hold it anymore. You can't avoid it anymore. Uh, it happens while you sleep, and when it happens, I thought like maybe I should just do another one by myself, like consciously.
So spot on. I mean, when you're saying that you're trying to avoid it and running away, this is, I feel, where a lot of guys start on this process, right? Because they're thinking, if I get away from the program as much as possible, whether it's actually running away from like a device, or it's sort of putting blockers on, or trying to sort of do a replacement behavior, such as when I feel the urge, I'll do 60 push-ups, right? So on and so
Yeah,
forth.
I know.
What happens is that with the avoidance, the urges just don't go away. The entire internal dialogue doesn't go away. And
Yeah, it gets even bigger.
exactly, or if it does go away in the moment, it will inevitably, as the nature of addiction, it manifests it, right? It will come back again later, as it should, and you're just going to face the same discomfort as you did last time, potentially even more stronger urges, more discomfort. And so the key here is to connect with that urge in the moment that it appears directly. If you're able to if you have a strategy where you can actually connect with that compulsive desire correctly and face it head on, acknowledge that you want to watch porn in that moment, but then get the rational mind in control to process that urge more towards the right mindset that we want to be on when overcoming these things moment by moment. And so, yeah, like, it makes total sense.
Absolutely. I see it all the time in my teaching. The people have reached out maybe a couple of years ago. I send them the link to your website, and they come back all the time and say, well, you know what? It does work. We can get there. And it is a process. If someone was drowning, you wouldn't teach them to swim at that point. Like, there's a process to this. And also that fear of relapsing and being able to go, you know what, I messed up. And that's okay. Let's move forward. Let's learn from that. What were the triggers? What was the situation? Rather than the shame of, I don't want to tell anyone that I've relapsed. It's like, you relapsed. We're human. Let's talk about it. Let's learn from it. Let's move forward. How many days was it? 10? Right, we're going to go for 20. Give me a call if ever you feel like, that urge, that impulse.
So, of course, knowing what I know now, this is where me and Ryan would differ. So, as he was mentioning, counting the days, I used to do this all the time, of course, when I was on NoFap. But the reality is, if you're aiming for a certain amount of days, you're not actually proactively rewiring the brain. All you're doing is setting a target where you're not doing something. When you're in that addiction cycle and you have all these thoughts about, I need to reach X days, or my target is this amount of days, sure, people might find it useful as perhaps a form of gamification. The situation of counting days doesn't do that rewiring. It doesn't achieve the transformation that you're looking for, where you know that no matter what day you're on, you can face any urge in the moment correctly from a position of strength and power, right? The other bit which I noticed as well was when he was talking about triggers. I know this is a scenario perhaps he was talking about, and he is obviously giving it as an example scenario, but when it comes to triggers, there doesn't need to be a perceived trigger for the wanting for porn to happen, right? Sometimes, of course, when you have things in your environment, yes, there are cues that can happen where you see a certain person dress a certain way, or you see an advert out in public, right? And that sort of perhaps entices you. That starts like that thread of thoughts, which typically leads you to engaging in porn. But a lot of the time, there doesn't need to be a trigger in the environment. It can just all be in your head. You just could be living in, fantasizing. You can have all these images in your head, and it could just happen like that. Even then, though, it doesn't need to be necessarily the case that you're even fantasizing. Compulsive desire can just come up in the moment when you're not thinking about anything. For example, like I've said this before, but when I was sitting down just doing work, the urge would just come up out of nowhere, and I wasn't thinking about a scene or a picture or anything. It would just simply appear in that moment, right? And I would have to deal with it in that moment.
That's something that I'm so glad you mentioned, because I think a lot of people often see setbacks as failures in addiction recovery. And I love the way you framed that the setback is actually a tool to learn, what drove you to this. And it's information that can help you toward recovery if you can look at it in the right way. So to know that it's not a failure, it's just part of the process, I think is helpful for people to hear as well.
Yeah, it is. It's part of the process. We're human. We're not perfect. But if you can take that experience and learn from it, and there's been loads of times in my journey like that. So, for example, way back when I used to have an office without a window, with a lockable door. It was just a prime opportunity where that impulse could take hold. So I moved myself to an office without a lock, with a window. And, there's that practical step, as silly as it sounds, that then it reduced the opportunity. So there's lots of different practical steps, spiritual steps, community-based steps, build that recovery journey that's unique to you, but use those relapses as a learning, as a lesson.
Don't get me wrong, I feel this is a really good sort of lesson to learn. It's sensible to sort of put yourself in situations where you're less likely to engage in porn, less likely to engage in your addiction per se. What's critical to understand here is that when you're going through life, you're going to be in situations where you're in these scenarios where, yes, it's more enticing to engage, it's more enticing to want to watch porn. And so when you're in these moments, it's about ability to come from a position of strength, knowing that you have a strategy or a tool that you can deploy in that moment in order to be able to think, right, this is a scenario where watching porn would typically happen for me. It's making sure that whatever situation that you're in, you have the strength and power to make the critical choice, to make the right decisions. Because if you do choose to engage in these moments, or any moments for that matter, it just spins those addicted neural pathways right back up. You're back in these thought patterns, and subsequently you're just back in the addiction, unfortunately. And although, yes, absolutely, we are humans, we all make mistakes, and we all have these sort of setbacks, it happens, right? As long as you understand that if you do choose to engage, you are accepting the consequences of the neural pathways or cognitive pathways, as you were saying earlier, probably misquoted him again, but knowing that they're going to spin back up, and those thoughts and those patterns and behaviors are just going to spin right back up, it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. For anyone who's listening who might relate to your story, what's one small step you would encourage them to take toward healing?
Okay.
I think the one small step that's actually the biggest step and the most important step is admitting it to yourself and someone else. Finding someone you can be honest with, drive down that shame that surrounds this stuff, and have an accountability partner. So mine is one of my best friends. He's the co-host of our Mental Reset YouTube channel that's due to launch soon. It's all about men's mental health, and he doesn't struggle with an addiction of any type, but he's like my accountability partner. I know I can be honest with him, and if there's a problem, I can ring him. If there was a relapse, I'd tell him, we'd explore it, he'd ask open questions. So talking, finding that person to be honest with, having that accountability partner.
I had an accountability partner in a previous program that I attended, and on the surface it does seem like a good idea because you're talking to someone, you're being open and honest, and sort of it can help people get out of that sense of shame and stigma when they're able to talk about it with someone. And of course, getting right help is essential, and you definitely want to talk about it with someone. When it comes to the matter of accountability partners, though, some people will have different ways of having that accountability partner set up. So for me, it was when I was in a paid program, I would tell my accountability partner over text, listen, I'm feeling urges, I feel like I'm about to relapse, I'm about to slip. And it was difficult because, one, you don't always catch them at the right time. They might be busy doing something, and they might be busy with their life, and then you're there feeling all these urges, and so you can't get to them right now. Even if you do manage to get in touch with them and you'll start talking about it, you could be on the phone with them, for example, right? And let's say I'm feeling the urge and I'm talking about it with them, say I'm feeling this, I want to watch this, I want to do that. You could have let's say a 40-minute conversation, and at the end of that 40 minutes you could have the urge go away. But then what happens is that let's say 20 minutes after the call, you're feeling the urges all over again, and you have a lot of dilemma going on in your head, majority of it coming from the addicted part of the mind itself, from the addicted neural pathways. And then all those sort of thoughts and emotions come up thinking, I really want to engage right now, but I just talked to him. If I call him back, I'm going to be bothering him, or because I'm feeling these urges again, and I just feel like a liability. And all these thoughts come up, right? All these different thoughts come up. And what typically happens is you end up in that willpower space and you end up relapsing. And so you get back into those addictive neural pathways, they spin right back up, and the problem still persists, and you're in a sort of, unfortunately, a bit of a worse off position on that. And soon as that happens, the addicted part of the mind knows that even with the accountability partner in place, you've still relapsed and you've conceded on that mental position. And it's really unfortunate. Again, it's also conceding that you don't have the power to overcome this on your own. You're conceding the mental position that you're not strong enough to overcome this by yourself, which of course is nonsense. You are. You just haven't ascertained the right strategy to do so.
So Ryan, as you've spoken with others about their experiences and done work in mental health support, have you noticed any recent trends in the way that pornography use can escalate?
With regards to pornography use, trends that people will kind of share, it's, when they're using substances, alcohol, for example, and they are watching pornography use, they say, it becomes more extreme. I'm going into spaces that I wouldn't usually venture into sober, and that's a concern. And that wasn't the case for me, which is why I think it flew for so long under the radar. It'd be the same kind of, almost obsessively watching the same videos. It didn't get more extreme or go into other spaces, but I do have that shared with me from others where they say, it really impacted my moral compass. I was watching, violent videos or things that the next day I thought, this has got to stop. So that is a trend. And we know the risk with that, with pornography. And you share, and I never knew this back in the day, that it's non-consensual and it's abuse, and it's just, I can't support that.
I definitely want to jump on the non-consensual stuff after this bit. I think when he was saying that the behavior in porn escalates, so the trends, first of all, we talked about alcohol and weed before, but what tends to happen is when you're on weed or you're on alcohol and you're watching porn, it's like a combination of some substance to enhance the experience. And obviously that takes you a bit deeper into the cycle. And this is very expected. It's very common. And in terms of what people are watching, the content, I just want to make it really clear here that it's absolutely expected when you're deep in a porn addiction cycle. The things that you watch do escalate. It's expected. It's expected that you'll get onto new fetishes or like new trends, as he puts it. And a lot of people will feel a lot of shame about that because they feel that, like they were saying, the moral compass sort of rejects a lot of this stuff that you're watching, but then you want to watch it at the same time. But again, it's just the tolerance cycle at work. It's just increasing. Again, it's very expected for this to happen. If your frequency of watching it is escalating, then your sort of taste will alter on that pornography. And so a lot of the times as well, I want to mention a lot of guys that I've spoke to, a lot of guys that I've been in programs with, and a lot of clients that we find in BCA, that will happen, and that they don't necessarily think that they would ever do that in real life. And most of the time they admit that, no, I wouldn't ever do that in real life. This is sort of a situation where it's exclusively reserved for my porn habit. And so I think making sure that's clear and just taking the shame away from that really helps people
know about these facts. I'm just like, no way. I've got to support the work you do and get this message out there and give people the facts. Unless they've got the facts and the awareness, they're not making an informed decision.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I think so many people, similar to what you said, have this belief that because something is made in mainstream pornography, that it must be ethically produced and consensual, and everyone's over the age of 18, and it's completely fine because it's quote unquote just entertainment. And we know from research and personal stories that that's not always true, and that, force, fraud, and coercion are happening in the mainstream porn industry more than most people would ever believe that they are. But it's something that so many people don't know. And so I think that is kind of the first step, is getting that education out there. But as you mentioned, you were consuming content that was fairly violent, or, you weren't sure how it was produced. Did you notice how that was affecting your perception of the world, or how you saw other people in everyday life?
Yeah, it shapes your perspective on relationships, expectations of intimacy. I think maybe there's a trend there of porn consumption and people moving on to relationships very quickly, especially with dating sites. Back in my day, couples kind of stayed together longer, worked on a relationship, worked on communication. And there seems to be a trend now of my younger friends, and they'll say, it didn't work out, and they're on to the next part.
I think the relationship sort of discussion is like another can of worms that can be opened some other time. I do want to sort of talk about this uncomfortable thing of like porn not being ethically produced. It certainly happens, unfortunately. Like, it is the reality of the situation. You have these like deeply rooted webs in the porn industry, right? And yeah, like there's a lot of unethical stuff going on behind the scenes where, yes, actors and actresses aren't there by consent. They are like, it's not legally done. And the savage reality is that when you're, let's say, addicted to porn, a lot of the sort of moral compass within the moment of watching it sort of does get put to the side because of the addicted part of the mind just wanting to get the fix that it wants. And so it's like a very sort of hard reality to hit. And I think a lot of the times when you finish your session, you get that like post nut clarity, right? It's like, oh my gosh, what have I watched? What am I doing? And you get that sense of sort of shame sinking in, right?
Making comments around the intimacy with that partner. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. So yeah, I think it's undeniable that it can shape your frame of reference, your window on the world, and your expectations. And social media does that, right? We see the perfect holiday and the car and the perfect life. So why wouldn't it do that with relationships if someone's consuming a lot of pornography?
Right. Was that something that you noticed the process of kind of breaking down the way that it had maybe influenced your expectations of intimacy in your healing process? Were you aware of where you had some of those expectations that you had to confront?
Really, the thing where it influenced my expectation and affecting my mental health was not feeling good enough. you'd see these performers and you think, well, I don't look like that, and I'm not that size, that shape, and it was very much like an impact on self-esteem for me, rather than an expectation on
Thank
my
you.
partner to be like this or do that. It was me kind of thinking, well, I'm not good enough, and it really affected self-esteem, because you start to think, well, that's normal. That's what all men look like, right? And I don't look like that. So that was hard, and that definitely influenced things like steroid misuse. I've used
Yeah, that's what I was
steroids.
thinking.
Do,
That's what I was thinking.
do you feel
That
that?
industry,
Go
that
on, bro.
industry can lead people to get steroids seen on social media. Also, there was a guy in our gym. I heard them talking in the changing store, changing rooms.
Yeah.
He was saying that he used to take steroids, and now he wanted to take again because he hate the way he look.
You have that comparison fatigue, right? As I like to call it. It can be exhausting, not just to sort of experience that feeling of comparison, but also when you're trying to upkeep, let's say, your side of the image or your side of the comparison. That's extra exhausting, right? Especially if you're like wanting to take juice.
I'm a
Me,
pro MMA fighter. I've only had 2 fights. The one I lost is on YouTube. The one I won is nowhere to be seen. That's typical. But covered in
Good man.
tattoos and that bravado, it kind of was celebrated in that realm. But when you're watching these videos, you're just like, oh, I'm not good enough. I need to be bigger or stronger or more ripped. And there was a level of body dysmorphia. I actually got to 17.5 stone because of steroid misuse. Because some of those performers, they're in great shape, and you think, well, I need to look like that to be accepted within myself.
Right. And I think that's a pretty common experience we hear from men. Is that something that, as you've spoken with other men who have been through a pornography habit as well, that you've had conversations with them about?
Yeah, it is. It is. Steroid misuse is another common trend that affects mental health, not limited to men, but mostly men's mental health. We're definitely seeing a shift whereby more men are being diagnosed with the eating disorders and body dysmorphia. 25% of those diagnosed with an eating disorder in the UK are men, and that's gone up year on year. And it's all down to do with that perception of self. I think unfairly and sadly, women were exposed to that earlier on, right? We had Vogue and Size Zero and all this ridiculous stuff that women should look like this or look like that. And now it's almost like caught up for men, where you've got reality TV shows and everyone's, in great shape. Whereas maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, the male figure had no expectation. What do you mean? You're strange. That's not an addiction. It's just a bit of fun. And it's like, well, not for me. It isn't. And when we will share videos on WhatsApps, because we've got your groups, your social media groups, and some groups will share a video, and I'm like, whoa, I don't want to see that. Oh, let me take myself out of that group, because it's so normalized within that group. You're strange if you don't, with some people.
Right. As you've been in recovery and spoken with other individuals in recovery, have you seen that shifting at all? That as more people open up about this and share their experiences, that there is a shift in that culture? Or is it still feeling like the normalization is kind of overwhelmingly what most people are experiencing?
There is a definite shift, 100%. I think sadly, because more people are struggling with porn consumption, more people are seeking out recovery and a relief to talk about it. See, 100%, we're seeing that shift, but things take time, sadly. 10 years ago, there was a lot of stigma and judgment around mental health and mental illness, and we've seen that shift where celebrities come forward and they're openly talking about having a mental illness. So it is shifting. We will get there, down to the great work of your website and your podcast and your sharing information. I now share the link to your website when I teach, and we will see that shift. We are creating that community of people who are fighting for a better future without porn consumption. So keep going. We'll get there.
Thank you so much. And
Nice. Click on the link in the description to take you to the addiction quiz. From the results, you'll know whether you have a compulsive behavior with porn or not. You don't have to opt in for further interest in BCA, and we'll just send you over the test results to your email.